time. We could do that faster. But it's also about reducing the number of tickets that you get, in order to run your infrastructure properly. So that's the two metrics on which we keep measuring our performance, and we think that that's the way to go, at least for some time over there. Uh, some of the points which I think I would bring up to the panel as trends that happened, and this is purely from a buyer's point of view, and I just hope it's relevant for everybody here, is that as we went into the market, we found that there were many engagements that we had where we were competing against the so-called the big players. They were the incumbents, or they were quoting in a new case altogether. And it's been very encouraging to find that in all such engagements, we've never lost an engagement. It's always been a win, for us. And I'm not trying to take this into a victory versus defeat kind of a scenario as it's happened in some of the other sessions in this conference. But just want to bring that out as a trend. I don't know if it points to anything, and probably in due course Paul can comment on that better. With his large vision of the entire industry. But that's something which we've been seen happen. The other important trend has been that most customers have been happy to look at the application piece and the infrastructure piece as two separate pieces. While there is always a talk about an integration on apps and infra, and one doesn't survive without the other, or you can't do infrastructure right without getting the application right, etc. But in terms of taking this as a service, we found that most customers were very happy treating the two tracks separately. So much so that all our initial engagements were engagements in which HCL had nothing to do with the application side, and there was a current incumbent player on the application side. Probably brings out the importance and the specialization which is required in the infrastructure management space. That is of critical significance. Moving on, I think in line with what the topic has been, what's next generation sourcing models over here. I think probably I'm jumping the gun, but as Paul mentioned, that there are clients who will bundle and unbundle. I think essentially there are going to be two ends of the spectrum. There are organizations who will need to look for specialized, discrete infrastructure management, because they will look at, for example, probably Santosh is going to talk about it, look at email as something which comes in from a specialized provider as an end service. So it doesn't matter to the organization whether there are 10 servers below it, whether there is a Lotus node sitting on it, or there is a MS Exchange sitting over there. He just wants his mailbox to be managed effectively. So there would be a need to do that. The other end of the spectrum will be to look at IT as, the infrastructure as a single point, a single neck to choke, as Paul pointed out, and that would be the other end of the spectrum. I think, and this is purely an HCL point of view. From an HCL point of view, and probably for organizations of the likes of HCL, the target market of the sweet spots will be in the other end of the spectrum, where you do both, because typically the managed service, that commoditized stuff is applicable for things that are on huge volume, that are not necessarily business domain knowledge oriented, etc. Whereas a single shop is where you need to look at infrastructure in one holistic entity. So you need to look at the mainframe, the server, and the database all in one go, and that's where you need to give it to one single party who will run that, rather than specialized players over there. So that's one part. The other topic which keeps coming up in this business is about whether the next generation runs on a people model, the FTE model, or some other model. I think this is always a debate, and I would call it also a myth that people would think that this is the vendor driven. So it's for the service providers to go and determine whether they want to do it as an FTE model, or they want to deliver these services on a managed service and a device-based pricing model. I guess you'll be surprised to find that most of the time we've gone out and tried to put a device-based model. Other than I think our first two engagements, every engagement we've put forth a device-based model. And it's the customer who comes back and tells us that it's going to be difficult to adopt this model. It's a little premature. We're not used to looking at a device model. We're used to looking at people. And it'll be easier to get this whole process going if we stick to FTE model. Let's have your device model as an option which we could use at some other time or in future. So, and you know what future means. So it just goes and stays in the books for a while. That's what's been happening. So I really don't know what's going to happen to this trend. Something is bound to happen. It's bound to change. But who's going to change it is the key issue over there. But I'm convinced of one thing, that in due course of time, the sourcing arrangement would not be based on effort. It will surely be based on some outcome. Whether that's a business outcome, whether there is a process outcome, whether there is a service level outcome, but it will surely be based on an outcome. I think that's something which we should see in 2 to 3 years. I think the market will drive all of us to do that. And lastly, and I think I've taken a lot of the time here, but lastly, I think I would agree with Paul that there would be definitely a need to spread geographically. Unlike the software business, here it will be absolutely critical for any player to be to provide these services from a geographically diversified base. And I think that's good because skills are available in different levels, different volumes, in different places. So I think that's what we would be looking at. However, I mean, from an India point of view, from an HCL point of view, what we would set out to do is to make that happen. Let that be geographically delivered. But we would gun for having the knowledge base, or you can say the think tanks or the driving, the knowledge centers be out of our country, of India, where the original process gets defined, gets determined, tested, and then tried, and then moved over. So that's it. Thanks, Paul, for not stopping me in between.
Oh, absolutely not. Very good comments. Thank you very much. Ravinder, would you like to spend a little time?
Yes. Thank you, Paul. And basically, Piyush, I've already talked a lot about RIM, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on RIM itself, but I would like to go and bring an aspect from the global aspect as a supplier and as a buyer from the offshoring aspect. So what I would like to say is, like when we talk about RIM, RIM is, we have quite a bit of experience from the BPO aspect, from the software industry aspect, but we have never taken an in-depth view of what exactly we're doing from the infrastructure standpoint. The infrastructure-enabled services that we go out and offer as a BPO offering, and we do a small piece of that. And I think some of the organizations are already sharing some piece of that pie. But organizations like IBM or HP's, they go out and actually make that as a streamlined business, and they actually spend a lot of time on developing that as a core value for their customers. They don't go out and say, we're going to go out and manage the software for you. They are clearly define that software is one service that they will enable, but along with that, the infrastructure that enable that software services, they will also take that and manage that. That's the key that actually you deliver out of the remote infrastructure management. I consider, RIM as a very high in the value chain of outsourcing. I mean, that's a global aspect, where you are taking the core infrastructure that enabled your business. You come in and log in, and whether you're a financial institute where you're trying to go out and do the financial transactions, or you are a BOC where you're managing the stores and you have the SAP application for you. Each of that transaction is a key, but the infrastructure, that transaction that goes over, managing that's the key value that remote infrastructure management offers. What we have seen is, as Swapn mentioned, the model that Swapn was mentioning about having a device-based model. I think it's India's success that as a cost arbitrage, that people are not willing to do a device-based model, because we do the exact same kind of business in the US, and where the model that we have is device-based model. That's the current trend that we have. Now, the future trend that we are going to see is not only the device-based model, where people are going to go beyond device-based model, and they don't care much about device or technology. They care about performance and productivity. That's where they see the value. The value that they want to see is when the user comes in, are they able to go out and do their basic work? With that being said, I want to probably hand it back to Paul for future discussion. Thanks.